The Time Worm by my co-host Richard Shirk brings us into Left of the Dial episode 77.
77.
How are you doing?
Oh,
How are
yeah.
you doing, Richard?
We're doing good. That was The Time Worm from my new album, With Clairvoyance. And Flick, as always, it's so good to hang out with you.
Yeah, and this week we are looking at brighter days, better weather. I guess where you are, it's not as big of a factor. For me, it's really, coming out of hibernation.
Yeah, wow. I remember those days. I used to live in Iowa. I now live in Oakland, California, where every day is like summer.
Yeah, I guess if every day was like August, then maybe I wouldn't be jealous, but it's not quite that.
No, it's like
So
every day is like mid-May. And there are
yeah,
palm trees just right out there. So,
yeah,
come visit. I'm inviting all of our listeners as well as you, Sean. It's been too long.
yeah. We'll all jump on a plane post pandemic and take you up on that.
Yeah, let's get those vaccines and hang out by Lake Merritt.
Yeah, and so this week we are talking about spring tunes. We have spring fever, and we put together playlists of songs that we feel represent the season. It isn't for any reason in particular. They aren't all about spring, uh, I guess officially anyway. But to us they are, and um, I guess as we unfold our lists, you'll maybe see what we're going for with this, what we had in mind when we put the songs on our list. Anything that you want to preview on your list?
Yeah, I just want to say, yeah, I think that's a great way to set it up. And I encourage everyone to make their own kind of playlist like this because I think that as we form our, big picture of what music we like, starting out when we're kids, mostly, there are just these times in your life when you're jamming on a record and you're, in Iowa driving in a car with the window down and your elbow, out the side of the open window and yeah, those things really lodge in your brain. So a lot of like you were saying, I with the exception of maybe like one or two songs, these are not like a spring is here, la da
Yeah.
da, but they're definitely songs that made an impression when I heard them and just always recapture that like that je ne sais quoi of when you can finally leave the house in a t-shirt. A t-shirt weather by we should have included that, but by the Lucksmiths. But save that for next year.
Yeah, I mean there I think are songs on both of our lists that occasionally do hit the theme, but definitely not prerequisite. It's just certain things just set the tone, and provide a certain soundtrack for it. Like and some things are just hard to put a finger on because, like for me, Ziggy Stardust the album, for whatever reason, always sounds the best in the month of December, and I have no idea why.
Yeah,
That's
the
one of those
mystery
things.
of being a fan of music is all these things get lodged in your brain and associated with places you used to live and times of the year.
Mhm.
I love that about music. Flick, before we get too far, would you tell our listeners how to find these playlists?
You can find the playlists on our Spotify page by searching LOTD Pod. If you want to search it by the playlist name, mine is Spring Ahead, called Spring Ahead Flicks Spring Tunes. Richard's is Just Like Spring Rain. Richard's LOTD Jams for Springtime. That's a lot to remember, so you might just want to search LOTD Pod to bring that up. And if you don't listen to us on Spotify already, as far as the podcast goes, you can also find our podcast by searching LTD Pod.
And I like that with both of our playlists. They're pretty much the one side of an old school tape.
Yeah,
More or less 45
TDK.
minutes.
Yeah,
Totally.
TDK 90. So yeah, side A, side B. Yeah, mine's about 47 minutes. So that means that it's going to cut off. I used to do that a lot though, just because I wanted to cram as many
Oh.
songs as I could, and
You would cut off the song at the end?
I would, because
No,
what
no.
else are you going to do? You're going to waste precious tape if you don't do that.
Well, that's where the bands like Guided by Voices and Pixies come in, where they all have these they have these
Short
really
songs.
great killer tunes that are like a minute and 12 seconds.
It's true. That's true. Yeah, I would just always hope that it cut off at a decent spot. But I don't disagree that it's tough to have that last song cut off.
Well, we don't have to agree on everything, Sean. So, case in point.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I'm somewhat in agreement, but it didn't mean that I didn't do it.
I'm
So.
looking at your list though. I'm enjoying these tunes. Should we could you tell me a little bit about what's going on with your jams?
Yeah, well, looking at yours, I think we maybe had some of the same ideas. I guess we'll see how that unfolds, but it does kind of seem like we're maybe on the same page here when we're putting together these ideas. You have a little bit more as far as number of songs on your list, so why don't you start first? I'll go second.
You got it, man. So yeah, we're gonna start out with one of the classics for me, which is the tune, the just one of the best singles of the '80s, which is "Spring Rain" by the Go-Betweens. It's just everything that's so good about the Go-Betweens. It's this like really breezy but driving pop song. This one's written by Robert Forster. The Go-Betweens having two primary singer-songwriters, Robert Forster and Grant McLennan. And yeah, this is just everything that you like about that band, especially in their kind of golden middle period. This is from their album Liberty Bell and the Black Diamond Express. It's a pop tune about driving around with the windows down in Australia, and and feeling that first bit of warm weather, and how joyous that is. It just makes you want to play a guitar solo. So that's such a cool tune, such a great band. We could do a whole show on go-between songs that just remind me of spring and summer, and we'd be here for a while. And then another band that I think always kind of like captured this like really breezy, interesting, chimey what's it is the band The Feelies, who are one of my faves, kind of contemporaries of early R.E.M. And the album, the song is On the Roof, which I believe is a lead-off track from the album The Good Earth. So definitely check that out. I think it's even produced by Peter Buck from R.E.M. I love the Feelies. You probably know their album Crazy Rhythms, but they also have, I think, probably 5-6 other really fun albums to choose from. And yeah, they're like 3 chords and kind of a mumbled lyric and these chimey guitars. Can't go wrong.
Yeah, and a couple of notes on the Feelies. Just a little aside here on Crazy Rhythms. The album cover of Crazy Rhythms was kind of my inspiration. Not that I was parodying it, but it was kind of the inspiration for our LOTD pod cover that we're currently using, the new one.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I tried to match up the font and the blue sky in the background. I mean, basically, the picture with that big blue sky in the background made me think of the Crazy Rhythms album cover. So I just kind of went from there, and then tried to match up that same font. So that was that played a big part in the in putting that together. So Peter Buck, one of the producers on the Good Earth. So I don't know if he recorded, if he produced this track, but he might have. Aside to that, I guess apparently Peter Buck, when he recorded or when he produced the March album for Uncle Tupelo, they said that basically all he did was press record and sat back and read the newspaper. So
that's all you got to do with a good band, you know.
Yeah, that's kind of a double-edged sword, where it's just like, well, apparently that means you're a good band. Two, it might mean he's overpaid a bit, but at the same time, it means you're a good band. The track "Let's Go" from this album on my definitely would have been like my spring choice for this, but definitely thinking along the same lines. So this is one of the big examples where I can see we're kind of thinking along the same lines with the Feelies, because they could have easily made my list as well.
One of the great bands of the 1980s, along with like 100,000 other bands that I like.
Yeah. And this was an album that was on the Twin Tone label. I should mention.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know that. I've got the I have this on vinyl, so I should have pulled out my stack.
Yeah. So definitely a lot worth mentioning there. Okay, so leading this off with as we recorded our new music show before this, and as we mentioned, the band Sloan comes up a lot. I'm not leading off with a track by Sloan, but with a Sloan offshoot. It is the Canadian supergroup, the Tons, who are Halifax-based musicians, Matt Murphy and Chris Murphy, who are not related. Chris Murphy from Sloan, Matt Murphy from Super Friends and the Flashing Lights, and I'm forgetting the third person.
Peter Murphy,
Mike O'Neill,
and from Bauhaus, and
Mike O'Neill from the Inbreds is
the guy from LCD Sound System. So.
That's right. Yeah, and Lars Ulrich and Ted Nugent and
so many Murphys in the music biz, but I really like
so you're
this
just
album.
going through every Murphy. I wasn't playing the same game. Shame on me.
Yeah,
I was not playing the same game.
I do like this album a lot. We have to talk about Sloan. I think it's in our contract. We have to mention them every show.
It might be, but I assure you, we're not taking any money under the table. Sloan just great. But this is from the first Tons album, self-titled album that came out a couple of years ago, and the song is called "Back Among Friends." And the reason why I picked this is multiple, because it's not only a really catchy, infectious spring sort of feeling to it, but it really sounds like it could have been written during the pandemic, during quarantine, because the title about Back Among Friends, as it might suggest, is just sort of being away from everything and just being very eager to get back to it, which, that again fits very well with spring, coming out of hibernation. These guys are from Canada. I'm sure they feel the very, very much the same during the months of especially January and February. But yeah, I mean, it really hits harder, I think, post-pandemic, or we aren't post-pandemic yet, but wishful thinking.
Yeah, cool tune. Thank you for this album. I'm sorry, this band is really cool, and as always, you bring so much cool music to my playlist just when we're not recording our show. So yeah, thank you.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
It has, but so has sincerity.
Yeah, and my number two track is by the Byrds from the album The Notorious Byrd Brothers, and it's Going Back. And it, I mean, one, just that Rickenbacker, that jangly Rickenbacker 12-string sound, I think just works better in spring than any other time. It's kind of going back to that Ziggy Stardust idea. I think it's just certain guitar sounds. You know, like Mick Ronson's guitar sounds like winter to me, or at least December. The Byrds, the Roger McGuinn 12-string Rickenbacker sound is very much at home in the spring months.
Oh yeah.
And thematically, this is a song about kind of going back to childhood in some sort of way, and I think that's also kind of a spring sort of association I have. Is just the reliving the same sort of feelings that you had when you were a kid.
Yeah, that's a very deeply. Yeah, we could do. Maybe that's a different podcast about the rebirth of spring and significance of
That's it.
Ashtar,
Rebirth.
etc.
That's the operative word right there.
Yeah, yeah, good picks. I love those tunes, and yeah, and I think that following up your Birds tune with a track from Jonathan Goes Country by Jonathan Richman is probably a good idea. So if you don't know the album Jonathan Goes Country, which I think is from like 85, 86, it's Jonathan Richman in a period of his career where not all the albums really work for me, but this one is just kind of flawless. And it's him jamming with like all the best guys in Nashville at the time. And the tune that I picked out for you is Since She Started to Ride, which is just such a fun song about a lady person that Jonathan in the song, or the protagonist in the song, is, seeing, is interested in, but she's just started riding horses, so she's not around as much.
Yeah, is there a Jonathan Richman song where he gets the girl?
Maybe if I had to pick one off the top of my head, shooting from the hip, it would be not so much to love as be loved. That would maybe qualify. But the Jonathan Richman catalog is pretty deep, and I've always thought it was really interesting because things are always going in and out of print because he's been on so many different labels. So I think Sean, when we were hanging out in college, a big album for me that we may have listened to together was his album, which I think is from 2003 or 2004, Her Mystery Not of High Heels and Eyeshadow, which has which I think is a re-recording of his tune Springtime in New York. So yeah, getting back to my point, this is a really cool tune. You can really kind of smell the hay in the pickup truck. And then another band that just always reminded me of the spring is Devo, and picked out one of their hits from Are We Not Men? That's Come Back Johnny. And yeah, just I think especially the keyboard lines in early Devo are always just like these like really great I want to say they're kind of like Mellotron adjacent things that just cut through and always remind me simultaneously of like driving around, learning how to drive in Iowa when I was a kid, and then also reminds me of the end credits of The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the Eighth Dimension. So there you have it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's there's a lot more to it than I was reading. Just by looking at the songs, I was I wasn't guessing it had anything to do with Buckaroo Banzai whatsoever.
Most things in my life do in some way, you know. It's a big movie for me. So again, another podcast.
The Buckaroo Banzai episode.
Yeah, episode 384.
All right, so my number three. Yeah, again, a few things at work. It has a lot to do with the sound of the songs, and some pretty couple of really well known songs here coming up. Just Like Honey by the Jesus Mary Chain from Psycho Candy. Uh, I I think this kind of borders on spring and summer. I think it just any season where the sun is prominent. Um, this is very much a sunny day sort of song. Big sky, like big blue sky. Just that sort of feeling.
I think
And
that
again,
what really does it for me with a lot of Jesus and Mary Chain, with that feeling, is the like heartbeat, like super simple drum beat. Uh, I don't know what it is about it, but it's like
well, yeah, it's that echoey quality to it too. Um, it sounds like it was recorded in a big room, like those drums, the way that they echo. Uh, and the guitar sound. A lot of this is based on guitar sound too. For me, there's something about that guitar on the intro where it just kind of like uh, it needs to be listened to outside for like the indoor walls cannot contain this, that sort of feeling.
yeah, man.
And that's why it doesn't work as well in the winter, I guess, because you're just in it. It needs to be outdoors. You need to either be outdoors or at least in a car where you're feeling somewhat at one with the outdoors.
Yeah, and I think to properly listen to a lot of Jesus and Mary Chain, it helps not to have neighbors.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
because it has to be loud. It
has to be pretty
absolutely
loud.
has to be. Yeah, so I mean, just bumping on the car stereo, at full volume. Just maximizing that subwoofer. That's the way it has to be done, right?
Totally.
Yeah, and then kind of along the same lines, maybe this one doesn't need to be as loud, but More Than This by Roxy Music from
Oh,
Avalon.
yeah, yeah.
Definitely has a spring feeling to me. I don't think there's a better time of year for this track. It just again it's kind of that big feeling, like there's a lot of this is a very big, like big emotions sort of song. Um, it's beyond, like, I don't know. It's just big. What's the word I'm struggling for here, Richard?
I would say the album Avalon by Roxy Music is like this panoramic, like
Yeah,
epic
Panorama.
epic kind of scale.
Yeah.
And uh, I think Brian Ferry and the rest of Roxy Music are really intentional about not only their music but their art direction. So you have albums like Manifesto, where the art on the LP cover is like a crowded dance floor, but on Avalon, it's what I think it's like a Valkyrie, like looking down on like a cloudy expanse of Scotland. It's
Hmm.
kind of ominous, but the sun's coming up.
Yeah, and these two tracks kind of go you know, away from my modus operandi, which is the deeper the cut, the better, and which isn't necessarily intentional. It's just the way things work. But these are not deep cuts, and I'm fine. I'm totally fine with that. These just happen to be the right choices for this list, anyway.
Very good. Yeah, really good picks. Um, yeah, to follow that up, we've got just like almost like an accidental pop hit. called Beatnik by The Clean. You can find that in a variety of places. I've referenced their anthology, which is pretty fun. Yeah, just like a 2-minute kind of Farfisa beat, um, kind of late. I think this is from like early 80s. Uh, thing that it has something that we in the music business called demo magic. Demo magic is when you're uh, jamming with your buddies or whomever, and you spontaneously write something, and the spontaneity of it is like pixie dust, and you can't. In some cases, you can just never replicate that. You know, that spark of like doing something new with your music and how it interacts with these thoughts that are just now coming into your head while you're rolling tape. And Beatnik totally is like a 2-minute uh, joyride of that. So it sounds like it was recorded in a garage, and I really hope it was recorded in a garage with the front door of the garage open. So check that out. That's really fun. I love that tune. Love that band. And
Yeah.
and then I think yeah, go ahead, please.
Oh yeah, no, I have to interject on the clean because I love the clean, but one of the yeah, one of the unfortunate concert going experiences I've ever had, where I saw them play 2.5 songs before David Kilgour walked off the stage, and that was the end of the show.
Oh no, I'm
I
sorry
mean,
that happened to you.
yeah, not officially, I guess, because the others stayed on stage, and actually they did tally ho with a member of the audience,
Okay.
or actually I guess multiple members of the audience. So they played tally ho, but as a two piece, and two piece plus audience members. So Boogerins were the opening band, and they were pretty good though. So it wasn't a lost night, but you know, when the headliner goes 2.5 songs, that's a rough one.
Yeah. Wow. I'm sorry that happened. I saw them at a little club in Portland, probably like 2007 or so, and I had kind of the opposite show where they played a really long set. Like when you see a band that you really like, but then you're like, come on, guys, wrap it up. Yeah.
Yeah, if only they could have saved some of that for when I saw them.
Well, I feel like our experiences are, they balance out. But yeah, I love the clean too. Now they're from Dunedin, New Zealand, and we will reference that later, a few songs later. And then following that up, speaking of demo magic, I think one band that became well known for that early in their career with Murmur was R.E.M., where it seemed like a lot of the songs were maybe not recorded on the spot, but written on the spot, and kind of, it preserved that spontaneity. And later in their career, they put out a lot of really cool records that are very studio based. And then I don't think it's their last record, but maybe like third to last record, Accelerate.
Second to last.
Second to last, thank you. They made an effort to, really recapture some of that garage rock and that spontaneity. A lot of the songs are loud and fuzzy and short and simple, and I love those kind of songs. And one of my favorite songs from this record is "Living Well Is a Best Revenge." And yeah, R.E.M. is definitely big kind of springtime vibe for me. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I like Accelerate. I don't go back to it as much as I would think. Like every time I do go back to it, I think to myself, why don't I go back to this one more?
You
But
heard it here first.
yeah, it is a good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did wrap it up on a couple of good albums. Um, But yeah, did somebody say Murmur?
Yes, somebody murmur.
Yeah, this is the one where we have crossover bands.
We almost had our crossover bands at the same spot.
Yeah, it's true. It did kind of work out somewhat symmetrically. Yeah, so the my next song is "Sitting Still" from Murmur, and again, this goes back to, it's a quite a bit different from the REM track that you chose on yours. This is very much going back to that Rickenbacker guitar sound, which just very spring like to me, and yeah, this is very much the REM jangle pop uh, era, and yeah, I think the thing about this where the there could be some crossover from one season to another. I think REM stuff works mostly well in the fall, but the really jangly stuff I think works best in the spring.
Right on. Yeah, good picks for
Yeah.
sure.
And then my next track, another jangly pop tune from Grand Prix by Teenage Fan Club, is Neil Young. This is not about Uncle Neil. The spelling is the spelling is Jung, and the Neil Young in this song is something of a lech. He's not a good guy, uh, but it's a very pleasant sounding song, very catchy and great melody and everything you associate with Teenage Fan Club. Uh, the subject of the song, not a really good guy though.
Thanks for that one. And let's see. Next up, we've got some Robert Pollard and Doug Gillard, where
I've heard of him,
you may have heard of them or seen them play like 185 times with Guided by Voices.
which would be like 3,000 300,000 minutes of your life would be that many concerts.
Yeah, yeah, and some people, yeah, they've been there, they've done that. And Robert Pollard and Guided by Voices generally, they have the golden period, and they're still putting out records after a hiatus. And some of it's really exceptionally good, and some of it is, whatever. It's fine. People are into it. I'm not as into it these days, but during kind of what for me was kind of like their golden period was late '90s, early aughts, and during that time, Robert Pollard put out a bunch, like, I think like 3 or 4 really really great solo records, in addition to his voluminous output in the band Guided by Voices and all the other side bands. But one of my favorite songs and one of my favorite albums, the song is "Do Something Real" from the album "Speak Kindly of Your Volunteer Fire Department," and it's catchy. It's it's got that like recorded in a garage or a basement kind of thing vibe to it. And yeah, I really challenge you to find a better pop vocalist than Robert Pollard. And this is really like him in my opinion, at his best. So spontaneous and such a great vocal range, and just the vibe of it, this like underground band that's been putting out records. At this point, they've been putting out records for like 20 some years. This was released, I think, in 2002 or so. And yeah, just a really mythic band, especially before we had the luxury of so many internets. Uh, and a band that really had a lot of mystery to me. So, and then follow that up with a band called The Chills that you probably know. This is from Submarine Bells. The tune is Heavenly Pop Hit, another band from Dunedin, New Zealand. And this album is, I think, just been reissued by Fire Records. So if you have a need to, or want to have it on vinyl, you can do that easily.
Yeah, and Robert Pollard, going back to Robert Pollard, he also threw a no hitter once. So there's on top of everything else he's accomplished in his life, he once threw a no hitter.
He did, yeah. I mean, that's such an interesting thing about, especially, like for me, when I first saw them, I was like 18, 19, just a kid, and didn't really know anything about them, and then started getting into like all of their crazy amounts of records that they've been putting out. You form this idea about, oh, like Robert Pollard's going to be like this weird hippie, like wizard kind of
Yeah.
guy. And then you meet him, and I got to meet him at the Metro, hung out with him and some people backstage, and you get to talk to him. He's like a Midwestern sports guy,
Oh yeah.
Um,
I
yeah,
I saw Guided by Voices a few years ago at the Metro, as a matter of fact, and I'm sure it was no coincidence that the Cincinnati Reds were in town playing the Cubs, which Wrigley Field is across the street from the Metro.
yeah, yes, it is.
And and I had that thought going in because they weren't really on tour. And so then like before the show started, you would see like these roadies, which were didn't look very much like roadies. They looked more like family members, and they're all dressed in Cincinnati Red stuff. All have ball caps on and jerseys on and all that. And it was I don't I don't need to know. It's that sort of thing where it's just like I think they booked that show because they knew that the Reds were going to be in town playing the Cubs, and it was just like, well, we can make this all into one big day,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. If you hang out with around the band, a lot of the inner circle guys. I don't know if they're still called this, but back then they were called the Monument Club. And so yeah, you'd be hanging out with like rock and roll people, like really pretty people in their 20s that have tattoos, and then you have the roadies and inner circle of Guided by Voices who are like these like big burly like guys from Ohio in their 50s who really don't know a lot about indie rock or anything, but they're like long-term pals of the band.
Yeah, and in addition to that, Pollard was also an English teacher. Was it English that he taught?
I want to say he was an elementary school teacher.
Okay.
In some ways, you kind of have to know, I guess, like a lot of things for elementary school kids, and you're also just kind of like
Yeah.
making sure they don't put their fingers in the light socket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's an interesting. He's gone a few different paths in his life.
Yeah, yeah, really fascinating guy. And even though I don't, for a while, I think if you were to ask me who my favorite band was, it would be Guided by Voices, like no question about it. And they're not that for me anymore. But I really treasure those days that they were.
Yeah, I still they still are fairly regular in rotation for me. I like them quite a bit. Always have. And that's kind of with any of the various lineups that they've had throughout the years. I have bits and pieces of all of that I like.
Yeah.
All right, my next track. Have I been harping on jangly guitar? This is another example of that. Todd Rundgren. The song "Couldn't I Just Tell You" from Todd Rundgren's "Something Anything," the classic "Something Anything," and just one of those great. I don't know if you'd officially call this power pop, but it definitely is. It's definitely a power pop song. Definitely has that same sort of spirit to it, and and it really embodies everything that is. And among those things, the jangly guitar that is playing a very large part of my playlist, and
Yeah,
yeah, that's why it's on here.
love it.
All right, and I think let me see. I'm gonna double up on the next two, and then I'll triple up on my last one. So I'll pass it back over to you for now.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, that works just fine. Um, yeah, so we're gonna go from, I guess, New Zealand to Australia with with the next two. Was um, you know how there's some bands where you just wake up one morning, you have like 8 of their records, and you don't really know where they came from, but you just have them. Do
I
you have bands
uh,
like that?
I don't know. I'd have to think about that. That sounds like a thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, for me, it's like, like Richard and Linda Thompson. Uh, I like them, but I'm not a super fan. But then you wander over to the stacks, and you've got like 6 records by them. Another band for that is Midnight Oil. For me, always been kind of like a casual fan. Some of their stuff is really fun. Some of it's kind of cheesy to me, even though I respect them a lot for their efforts in environmentalism in Australia and representing Indigenous rights and fighting for nuclear non-proliferation, especially in the excuse me, the 1984 Australian election. Uh, so yeah, and they just kept putting out records, and they always just kind of ended up in my collection. And one of them is uh, let's see, 200,000 watts RSL, which is a pretty well curated best of collection, and the tune is "Surfs Up Tonight." Just like this really great snaky, reverby guitar lead line, and I think to them it's probably like a fun throwaway tune. For me, it's like really great, evocative, uh, summer, spring jam,
Yeah.
and you can really, you're like, yeah, let's go surfing in Australia with this abnormally tall lead singer who looks so scary.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you kind of need to know tracks like this, I think, to round them out a little bit, so that it's not all the out where the river broke. It's not all that.
oh, you did that really well.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I
It's
think what you're getting at is that they can really, if you only know their pop tunes, they can either sound like they're cheesy or like a bunch of blowhards.
yeah, or maybe heavy-handed would be the right term. So that that these guys can have a good time too. Um, yeah, it kind of helps, I think, put the heavier stuff into context.
Totally. And as for like a good time, I think that they would totally party like I party in Oakland with like rainwater and some fresh vegetables. It's awesome. They'd probably play me in ping pong. And yeah, so from that tune,
At Shea Richard,
yeah, totally, man.
Shea Richard.
Yeah, the Art Deco fortress over here. But yeah, and if you want to know more about Midnight Oil, I recommend. I saw this great documentary that didn't have a theatrical release except for like one night, sparsely attended in a rented theater in Oakland with my buddy Rand, and the documentary is called 1984. So it's gorgeous footage shot on their 1984 tour which was lost for like 30 years, and then gorgeously restored and presented. So check it out if you're that interested. Another band that is admittedly like kind of cheesy sometimes, but I love them, is Crowded House. And I picked out a tune from kind of like the farewell album of their first incarnation. That album is called Together Alone, and the track is Pineapple Head, which is this great waltz. It sounds like Sting might be playing the lute, and that's fine with me. I don't have to be cool all the time.
Yeah, I used to have this. Well, I think I still have this album somewhere, but I liked there was a single locked out off of this album that I liked it quite a bit. Yeah, Crowded House. Well, Neil Finn in general, because I like Split Ends a good deal, a really good deal too. Yeah, the Finns are pretty underrated. I think.
Yeah. So there you have it.
Except for
Couple.
they have at least one song that everybody in the world knows. So I guess maybe they're not super underrated.
Yeah, and I think they're on the currency in Australia, so they're yeah, maybe underrated over here, but way to go, guys. You did it right.
Yeah, and I think it's at this point where I do have to ask if there is there's a lot from Australia on here and New Zealand as well. Uh, is there any sort of connection you're making between those countries and spring? And by the way, you know that Australia is the land down under. Does that go for New Zealand because it's basically in the same place, or is that not the land down under?
I think that if you are a Kiwi, you'd probably get really annoyed at that because I think that there is just generally, like I used to live in Iowa, you live in Iowa now, and then you go out to a coast and you talk to somebody and they're like, "Where are you from?" "From Iowa." And they're like, "Oh, are you from Boise?" Like, like, no, that's a
I've had that actually.
yeah, everyone has. So I think that mild but palpable annoyance at people not knowing like geography. I think
Well,
that
I'm just wondering if that applies though, because it's like if Australia's down under, then New Zealand should be down under too, right?
I think they have their own kind of persona where I probably what I'm trying to say is I probably wouldn't say that to an actual person from New Zealand because they'd get mad at you.
What about you're from the place that Lord of the Rings is?
Yeah, they might represent that a lot,
Okay.
a little bit maybe. But yeah, back to your question before we got derailed is like
I
why
derailed my own question.
I just think that there's so many cool bands that come from Australia and New Zealand specifically in the 70s and 80s. I mean, you have the Go-Betweens who are, if you ask me now that same question about, that we were talking about earlier with Guided by Voices, like who's your favorite band? If I had to pick right now, it'd be the Go-Betweens.
Hmm.
Making, weird indie music, writing songs about how much they love books and reading and libraries and how they're kind of like these outcasts, but not like dangerous rebel motorcycle riding outcasts. They're just like the geeky guys in the back of the class, kind of like I am and was,
Yeah.
And great pop tunes, like great like 3-minute pop tunes too. And then on the other side you have like the Boys Next Door who become Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. I mean, in between there, the Birthday Party, of course. So yeah, just so many cool bands, and this great indie scene in New Zealand with the Chills and the Clean and who else, like Fruit Bats, all sorts of great stuff. So yeah, there's just like this little the it was a good time to be alive, and a lot of like-minded people found each other.
Yeah, and I totally get it. Like if it's independent of the location at all, just based on the pop songs, because that's where I think like where I looked at your list, I'm like, yeah, we're kind of on the same page because it's these a lot of pop songs, very yeah, and so I didn't know if geographically if that was playing any part in it as well.
They were just doing it right, man. And
Yeah.
yeah, a good like 2-3 minute pop song, yes, please. That's how I
Mm.
roll.
Yeah, and it's especially at home here, I think, for me. All right, so my next song, in the same vein, the pop song, and some eyes might roll. I don't know if your eyes are going to roll here,
I'm
but
consciously making an effort to not be a snob.
yeah. Well, and like you might have felt a little self conscious about your crowded house pick, but I totally concurred with that. But anyway, my next song is somebody who admittedly is not the king of cool as far as settings like this go, but Ben Folds 5 from Whatever and Ever Amen, the song Kate, which I think is as much as anything really hits the themes on the head. It kind of is that kind of a dorky love song, really. And I think dorky love is especially prominent in the springtime.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to listen to this record a lot, and yeah, there's no. I think one thing that is irritating about the kind of like waters that we have to navigate as music people is yeah, I mean that people having the attitude that something isn't cool enough for them,
Yeah.
and yeah, we've got a pretty wide palette, so I don't like to undercut that by being a hypocrite. And yeah, if you like it and you like music, then you're my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the way I feel too. And I don't say what I said, in any sort of, uh, in inferior or
I think you're saying it
self-conscious
because
sort
I
of way.
totally gave you shade about it
Yeah.
last week when we were talking in the green room, and I think you caught me at like an unguarded moment, and you mentioned Ben Folds,
Well,
and I gave you like the verbal eye roll of like,
yeah, no, I totally put it out there in that way though too, like just totally knowing that that's what it would be subject to, and I totally get that. Like I think there's a difference between Ben Folds and Sonic Youth per se, but I'll listen to either one of them. I know one
yeah, right
is,
on, yeah.
I know one is generally recognized as cool, and the other one not so much. I totally get what the difference is and why it is that way. It doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah, as long as you like it, Flick, then we're cool. I dig what you're doing on this
Yeah,
playlist.
and yeah, for anybody that doesn't agree, you're entitled to your opinion. That's fine. Agree to disagree.
Yeah, the
Uh,
chat is blowing up. Chat room.
but yeah, that again, a dorky love song, which if you don't have one dorky love song in your spring playlist, you're not doing it right. And my next one, the band Beach Bunny, Chicago band, who made one of my favorite albums of the 2020 year, the album Honeymoon. And I guess toward the end of my list is when the themes are really hitting on the nose, because the name of the song is April. As you can guess, I mean, we're in April. This is thematically right on the nose, and of course, the opening line of the song, "April showers bring May flowers," and I'm great tune though, very catchy, very nice pop song, kind of a melancholy, catchy tune.
Oh, cool. I can't wait to hear that. I'm gonna put this on as soon as we wrap up.
Yeah, and so then I will pass it over to you, and then I will wrap it up with my last three.
I see what you're doing with that last
It's a,
little batch.
it might be kind of a trilogy, you might say.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, that's good. uh, yeah. So one of my favorite people generally is Billy Bragg. Um, I love that he's able to, and this is from this tune is "Help Save the Youth of America" from Talking with the Tax Man about poetry. So I like a ton of things about Billy Bragg. He's not bashful about being political. He can record an album on electric guitar and it sounds like a full band. And he's just, a likable, sincere guy. And Help Save the Youth of America is like kind of a little poke at, I think, people who are pop pops figureheads who don't speak out and make a difference. So and this is coming in the Reagan 80s. So yeah, it's kind of like a breezy little pop tune, but also a satire, I like that. And the album itself is a great album about uh, the issues of the day, but also just about being a young guy, a young musician in love. So definitely a springtime vibe on Talking with the Tax Man about poetry. And then while we're airing the dirty laundry on bands that we sometimes like neglect to mention when we're in hipster company, I love the band Squeeze. I think they're a great band. They had a bunch of huge hits like Pulling Muscles from Michelle. And I think this one was kind of a big hit too, but I don't really hear it around as much. And this is Goodbye Girl. Um, with springtime, people are coming out of their bunkers, and I think Jonathan Richman in Springtime in New York is like, and then there's a couple breaking up,
Mm.
one of those songs, and just infectious killer hook and Farfisa backbeat from a drum machine. Can't go wrong.
Yeah, I have a suggestion on related to this. A good cover of this. Are you familiar with a band called Tarkio?
I know of them. Was that
Is Colin Malloy's
Colin Malloy's band from?
pre-December's band?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and they did a cover of this, and it's really good. It's just stripped down, really good version of it.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll look that up.
It's out there. And then are you going to do your last song here, or?
Yeah, I might as well. I have very fond memories of um, repainting my house when I was a youngster in Iowa and having the Clash on repeat and the stereo loud enough that I could hear it while I was on the ladder, like 35 feet above the ground unsupervised. Because it's before they really worried about that kind of thing. And later in my life, but not that much later, the Clash and I had a really epic trip to Mexico, where for whatever reason, probably because I was a disorganized teen and I wasn't as together of a person as I am now, but I had probably like a 2-week, 3-week vacation with my folks, and had a big stack of really cool tunes to bring with me. And the only CDs that made it into the bag were my dad's practice CDs for learning clarinet and the Play Along, Learn Clarinet backing tracks, and London Calling by The Clash. And so I always have fond memories of listening to that album over and 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 over, and then still loving it and getting back and be like, if it were like any other album, I'd be like, I never want to see this again.
Well, and at least it was a double album too, so you had
Yeah,
so.
totally.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think if I had to list the records that I've listened to the most in my life, I think London Calling, aside from that vacation, just it always sounds good. It's always good. And one of my favorite songs is Spanish Bombs, which is an a really great 3-minute pop song about the Spanish Civil War. So there you have it. It's yeah, it's a pop song. Everyone's doing what they do really well. Like Joe Strummer is talking about the Lincoln Brigade, but he probably just kind of read the Wikipedia of it, and he's kind of going to make up the rest.
Well, the Wikipedia from back then.
Yeah, the 70s Wikipedia. Um, so yeah, a great kind of spring summer tune, has a lot of associations with me. Being up on that ladder, painting my house because no one else was going to do it, and then being kind of having the Clash locked in my 90s or early aughts Discman for 3 weeks, being my only musical companion, aside from
Yeah,
mariachi bands.
and if you're doing a springtime list, you're probably and you have the Clash on it, you're probably going more Mick than you are Joe.
Yeah, and Joe has so many cool tunes that are pop songs that
Mm.
are easily misattributed to Mick. Like I think on London Calling specifically, just off the top of my head, I think "Lost in the Supermarket" is a Joe song, even though he made Mick sing it. So lots of that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of the thing is that yeah, what regardless of who wrote what, um, those are the pop songs are the mix songs.
So yeah, and it never hurts to end any playlist, any radio show, any whatever with like a really solid Clash tune. It's a good way to wrap things up.
Well, and it's interesting that that you didn't finish out with "Goodbye Girl" because that's what I would have probably done. Um, you finished. You went rocking. You went from "Goodbye Girl." It's just like down note to the up note. You just went. You know.
I think if you had to look at this and kind of parse out some sort of motivation behind it, it would be like, okay, "Goodbye Girl," like the breakup song, and then like the Spanish Bombs, like going out in a blaze of glory kind of thing.
Yeah.
Kind of a 1-2 punch.
Okay, so the closing out of my list, as I previewed, it's a little bit of a trilogy here. Rain songs. I'll just put it out there. The first song is by the Jayhawks from Hollywood Town Hall, an album very near and dear to my heart. And the track that I chose at the time wasn't really one of my favorites because it settled down like rain as the song. Wasn't really one of my favorites at the time because it quotes Barry Manilow, which I wasn't so keen on.
I really like Barry Manilow.
But yeah, me not so much. But I like Ben Folds though. But at least back in the day, maybe not so much now. I haven't heard anything new by him in quite a while. This is a great song though. I think like the whole album for me is a classic. But yeah, this just maybe for that reason, maybe for something else, just wasn't one of the ones that I was as big on at the time. And I think over the years, it really has been a grower for me.
Yeah,
And
and that's such a nice thing about a really solid record in music in general. Like the tunes that maybe weren't that interesting to you when you were a youngster are have different significance when you're a little bit further along in your story.
mhm. Yeah, and it's not just because it's about rain that it fits well here, but it really is catchy and infectious and just sort of uh, ebullient. is a word.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very good word too. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's a good fit here. From there, I go into probably more your territory than mine, but a song that I've always loved a lot. Box of Rain from
Oh
the
yes,
Grateful Dead, American Beauty. I
classic. Yeah.
I think at this point I've mentioned Cheapo Records quite a lot, so and I don't mind keeping them in business if I can do that or help to do that in any way.
And Cheapo Records is in Minneapolis, as I recall, right?
Minneapolis as well as St. Paul, I think. At least it used to be in both. And this is another one of those records that way back when, the first time I ever went to Cheapo Records, I bought a copy of American Beauty and still have the same copy today. I have never owned this on any other form of music. But yeah, American Beauty was the first Grateful Dead record that I ever purchased back then at Cheapo Records. And when I listened to it, I thought, yeah, maybe I like the Grateful Dead. Maybe I'll end up being a Deadhead. That didn't happen. That was not
Yet.
that was not in the cards. But I really like American Beauty quite a bit though.
Oh, it's a classic. Uh, my first concert was a Grateful Dead concert in 1979, and I was negative 3 months old. No, negative, more like 6 months. No, I mean 6 weeks. So I was in there. I was checking it out. Oh yeah,
You could have been one of those babies that was born at a Grateful Dead show.
I may have been, and it's just been kept from me. But yeah, it's always been a band that my family is into, from my parents being hippies, but then my stepmother working for Bill Graham, and then being out in the Bay Area where like you have friends who have jammed with Bobby Weir, just by accident, and yeah, you really get to appreciate the complexity of that group, and how collective and interesting it was, even if you're not always into the tunes. But yeah, American Beauty, wow, you can't go wrong with that. That's even if, like you said, you're not a Deadhead, it's just
Yeah.
a wonderful Americana pop record.
Yeah, it is. It is one of those things that I think we can all agree on. Maybe not everything, like mentioned just I think a week ago, the 50-minute version of Dark Star. Maybe I'm not on board for that, but
Yeah, and a lot of times me neither, but I always like the idea of it, even if I don't put on like a lot of their live shows. I'm more of an album guy,
mhm.
but their albums do get a lot of play in our house. So definitely American Beauty and Working Men's Dead and Mars Hotel and some of the other Anthem of the Sun, kind of more studio based fan.
Yeah, the person that has like a tape of just about every show, like I don't know that a conversation is going to get very far between me and them. But yeah, if we can still agree on American Beauty, then I'm down for that.
Yeah, right on. Yeah,
But
please.
but not I don't need any of the live tapes.
Well, you can only borrow them, but I can dub them for you if you want me to.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm very regardless of any feelings about the live version of is there like a 30-minute live version of Box of Rain out there somewhere?
Yeah,
Did they ever jam long on that one?
I'm sure that they did. And and it's funny that you put this on the list, aside from being A great tune. My lovely wife Susan and I were just down by our neighborhood lake, and that was one of the songs that we were playing on ukulele. We've both taken up the tenor ukulele.
So it's a good song. It's a very good song. It's I guess I could say the song that made what was it, Lizzie on Freaks and Geeks. You know,
Oh wow,
you know how
Freaks and
she
Geeks, yeah. Wow,
you know how she
you
ends up
get that,
being
yeah.
a deadhead at the end of the show,
Yeah, she does.
which you
Spoiler.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, which oh sorry, shh, didn't say that. Because anybody out there who's not acquainted with Freaks and Geeks needs to acquaint themselves forthwith.
Yeah, totally. I've forgotten about how much I like that show and how a lot of the tunes that you and I talk about end up being a big part of those characters' lives. I think I watched Freaks and Geeks on VHS, so it's been a little while,
Yeah,
obviously.
I have it. I think on every form of media that there is.
You've got the laser disc, man.
I don't have it. I don't have it for streaming though. That still hasn't. They still haven't made it available for streaming that you can own. It has been on Netflix, obvious, or I guess not obviously. It's obvious if you had Netflix a few years back, but no, they still haven't. Once they make that available to own for streaming, then I will own it for streaming as well as everything else.
Nice. Yeah, I've completely spaced out about that show, but yeah, to catch up our listeners if they don't know what that show is, it's kind of
It's
like an intelligently written response to like the Wonder Years and a lot of other kind of cheesy um TV shows about people going through like the formative years of like middle and early high school. And it gives a start to a lot of names that are like big
yeah.
Hollywood names like James Franco and who else?
Well, it was an Apatow show. Him and Paul Feig were the creative minds, running the show, and so it has a lot of those same people. James Franco, uh,
Paul
Seth
Rudd
Rogen.
too, right?
If he was on it, I don't remember now. He might have been on it at one time, but it would have been just like a little bit part
Yeah.
at some point. Seth Rogen, uh, Jason Segel.
Jason Segel. Oh, that just breaks my heart how much he wants to be a drummer.
You're right. Yeah, one of the funniest things is the show that opens with him listening to "Spirit of Radio" by Rush, and it shows him drumming, but all you hear is Rush, so you can't tell that he isn't a very good drummer. You think he's drumming the Neil Peart parts, and then it cuts to him drumming without the sound, and he's just awful. And it's hilarious.
Oh, thanks for that tasty TV sidebar flick.
Yeah. Great show. Everybody needs to know that show. It's one of the best TV shows of all time. The last song on my list, the last part of the trilogy, as well as the last part of my list, is one of my favorite songs. Band that maybe we don't agree on. Do you know this song though, Richard? Before I reveal it.
Give me another 30 seconds to hastily.
Well, the song is Led Zeppelin's "Rain Song" from Houses of the Holy. Just to me, one of the most sublime songs ever. Just, just beautiful, and of course, rain in the title, so it fits here. Fits in spring, but also just if it had no words to it, had no lyrics, I think it would still be the song I'm picking here, regardless.
Yeah, well, I like what I'm hearing, and I have heard this song before. I've never really paid it a lot of attention, but I really, that as we've talked about before, I really like that about hanging out with you and doing these shows is that you have such a wide palette of music, and it doesn't always exactly overlap with mine. But I know that you have great taste, and you're going to pick out really good tunes. So I always listen to them.
Yeah, so maybe we can find some overlap with this one. I don't know. So you're already aware of the song, or just maybe a little bit aware?
My mom used to have this record, and I listened to it a couple times when I was a kid, but I never really got into it. So yeah, I would say I'm not really that aware of the song at all. I'm not, you know. I think with you and the Grateful Dead, like I've never really been able to get that into Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, but of course, this isn't like the first thing you think about when you think of Led Zeppelin.
Oh yeah, it's obviously a cool deep cut.
Yeah, yeah. Which I don't know if it quite qualifies as a deep cut, because it's definitely one of the best songs they ever did. For me, it's like the best one, period. So I don't know if it's quite a deep cut, but it isn't Black Dog, and it isn't Stairway to Heaven. It's not one of the ones that's ever on the radio. So in that way, I guess it is. It's hard to figure out what the deep cuts are with Led Zeppelin, though.
Well, I think it's a really tasty tune and cool wrap up for your playlist.
Yeah, I could have gone for, like, I could have made a list of of Rain songs. I think maybe at some point that'll be the thing. Another song about the rain by Cracker could have been on here.
Yeah, you could really go down that rabbit hole for sure.
Yeah, yeah, in the works, I guess.
Wow, yeah. Well, this has been really fun, and yeah, I love this change of season, and even though it's like summer most of the year here in Oakland, it still has like a special something about springtime, and these tunes are what I want to be listening to as I get that extra fan out of storage.
All right. Yep, time to do that. Shorts weather is around the bend.
That's what they say.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, these are really great tunes. Sean, as always, you picked out some cuts that I wouldn't have known about. So yeah, plenty to catch up on for our next show.
Yeah, two good lists here. Yeah, so between the two of us, filled up the TDK 90 for you. So you have 90 minutes of music to listen to jam out to the soundtrack of your spring.
And if you send in a photo of the actual cassette that you've dubbed these onto with a fun label, send it in, and we'll talk about how awesome you are on the air, or maybe like send you an album or something. I don't know.
It could happen. You might get one of mine. You might get one of Richard's.
Yeah, you never know. And as we wrap this up, would you like to tell our listeners what we're up to next week?
TBD.
TBD. Stay tuned. This is like the sweeps.
It is not deed yet.
Yeah. What will they talk about?
TBD.
Tune in to find out.
Tune in in 1 week's time.
You got it. And Sean, as always, it's been so much fun to hang out with you and talk about music, and learned a lot of new stuff. And we'll do it again next week.
And we'll do it again next week. See you then.
Okay. Until then, you've been listening to Left of the Dial podcast.